Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. Chapter 19. This audiobook is created by Mimoxa. Let's start the video. Chapter 19. It's Monday, and the library is closed. The library is quiet enough most of the time, but on a day like this when it's closed, it's like the land that time forgot. Or more like a place that's holding its breath, hoping time won't stumble upon it. Down the corridor from the reading room, past a staff-only sign, there's a sink area where you can make coffee or tea, and there's a microwave oven too. Just past this is the door to the guest room, which includes a bare-bones bathroom and closet. Next to the single bed is a nightstand outfitted with a reading lamp and alarm clock. There's also a little writing desk with a lamp on it, plus an old-fashioned set of chairs, covered in white cloth, for receiving guests, and a chest for clothes. On top of a small bachelor-sized refrigerator are some dishes and a small shelf for stowing them away. If you feel like making a simple meal, the sink area is right outside. The bathroom's outfitted with a shower, soap and shampoo, a hairdryer, and towels. Everything you need for a comfortable short stay. Through a west-facing window you can see the trees in the garden. It's getting close to evening, and the sinking sun glints past the cedar branches. I've stayed here a couple of times when it was too much trouble to go home, Oshima says. But nobody else uses the room. As far as I know, Miss Seiki never uses it. It's not going to put anybody out. You're staying here, is what I'm trying to say. I set my backpack on the floor and look around my new lodgings. There's a clean set of sheets and enough in the fridge to tide you over. Milk, some fruit, vegetables, butter, ham, cheese. Not enough for a decent meal, but enough for a sandwich or salad at least. If you want something more, I suggest takeout or going out to eat. For laundry, you'll have to make do with rinsing things out in the bathroom, I'm afraid. Let's see. Have I forgotten anything? Where does Miss Seiki usually work? Oshima points to the ceiling. You remember that room on the second floor you saw on the tour? She's always there writing. If I have to go out for a while, she sometimes comes downstairs and takes over at the counter. But unless she's got something to do on the first floor, that's where you'll find her. I nod. I'll be here tomorrow before 10 to run through what your job involves. Then just relax and take it easy. Thanks for everything, I tell him. My pleasure, he replies. After he leaves, I unload my backpack. Arrange my meager assortment of clothes in the dresser. Hang up my shirts and jacket. Line up my notebook and pens on the desk. Put my toiletries in the bathroom, and finally stow the pack itself in the closet. The room doesn't have any decorations at all, except for a small oil painting, a realistic portrait of a young boy by the shore. Not bad, I decide, maybe done by somebody famous. The boy looks about 12 or so, and he's wearing a white sun hat and sitting on a small deck chair, his elbows on one of the arms of the chair, his chin resting in his hand. He looks a little sad, but kind of pleased, too. A black German shepherd sits next to the boy, like he's guarding him. In the background is the sea and a couple of other people, but they're too far away to make out their faces. A small island's visible, and a few fist-shaped clouds float over the water. Most definitely a summer scene. I sit down at the desk and gaze at the painting for a while. I start to feel like I can hear the crash of waves, the salty smell of the sea. The boy in the painting might be the boy who used to live in this room, the young man Miss Seiki loved. The one who got caught up in the student movement clashes and was pointlessly beaten to death. There's no saying for sure, but I'm betting that's who it is. The scenery looks a lot like what you see around here, for one thing. If that's the case, then it must be from about 40 years ago, an eternity to somebody like me. I try imagining myself in 40 years, but it's like trying to picture what lies beyond the universe. The next morning, Oshima arrives and shows me what I'm supposed to do to get the library ready to open. First, I have to unlock and open the windows to air out the rooms, make a quick pass with the vacuum cleaner, wipe the desktops, change the flowers in the vases, turn on the lights, occasionally sprinkle water in the garden to keep down the dust, and, when the time comes, open the door. At closing time, it's the same procedure in reverse. Lock the windows, wipe the desktops again, turn off the lights, and close the front door. There's not much for anybody to steal here, so maybe we don't need to be so worried about always locking the door, Oshima tells me. But Miss Saki and I don't like things done sloppily, so we try to do things by the book. This is our house, so we treat it with respect, and I hope you'll do the same. I nod. Next, he shows me what to do at the reception desk, how to help out people coming to use the library. For the time being, you should just sit next to me and watch what I do. It's not all that hard. If something ever comes up you can't handle, just go upstairs and ask Miss Saki. She'll take care of it. Miss Saki shows up just before 11. Her Volkswagen Golf makes a distinctive roar as it pulls up, and I can tell right away it's her. She parks, comes in through the back door, and greets the two of us. "Morning," she says. "Good morning," we answer back. That's the extent of our conversation. Miss Saki has on a navy blue short-sleeved dress, a cotton coat in her arms, a shoulder bag. Nothing you could call an accessory, and hardly a hint of makeup. Still, there's something about her that's dazzling. She glances at me standing next to Oshima, and looks for a moment like she wants to say something, but doesn't. She merely beams a slight smile in my direction, and walks up to her office on the second floor. "Not to worry," Oshima assures me. "She has no problem with your being here. She just doesn't go in for a lot of small talk, that's all." At 11, Oshima and I open up the main door, but nobody comes for a while. During the interval, he shows me how to use the computers to search for books. They're typical library PCs I'm already familiar with. Next, he shows me how to arrange all the catalog cards. Every day the library receives copies of newly published books, and one of the other tasks is to log in these new arrivals by hand. Around 11:30, two women come in together, wearing identical jeans. The shorter of the two has cropped hair like a swimmer, while the taller woman wears her hair pulled back. Both of them have on jogging shoes, one a pair of Nikes, the other Asics. The tall one looks around 40 or so, with glasses and a checked shirt. The shorter woman, a decade younger, is wearing a white blouse. Both have little day packs on, and expressions as gloomy as a cloudy day. Neither one says very much. Oshima relieves them of their packs at the entrance, and the women, looking displeased, extract notebooks and pens before leaving them. The women go through the library, checking the stacks one by one, earnestly flipping through the card catalogue, occasionally taking notes. They don't read anything or sit down. They act less like people using a library than inspectors from the tax office checking a company's inventory. Oshima and I can't figure out who they are or what they could possibly be up to. He gives me a significant look and shrugs. To put it mildly, I don't have a good feeling about this. At noon, while Oshima goes out to the garden to eat his lunch, I fill in for him behind the counter. "Excuse me, but I have a question," one of the women comes over and says, the tall one. Her tone of voice is hard and unyielding, like a loaf of bread someone forgot on the back of a shelf. "Yes, what can I do for you?" She frowns and looks at me like I'm some off-kilter picture frame. "Aren't you a high school student?" "Yes, that's right. I'm a trainee," I answer. "Is there one of your superiors I could talk to?" I go out to the garden to get Oshima. He slowly takes a sip of coffee to dissolve the bite of food in his mouth, brushes the crumbs from his lap, and comes inside. "Yes, may I help you?" Oshima asks her amiably. "Just to let you know, we're investigating public cultural facilities in the entire country from a woman's point of view, looking at ease of use, fair access, and other issues," she says. "Our group is doing a year-long investigation and plans to publish a public report on our findings. A large number of women are involved in this project, and the two of us happen to be in charge of this region." "If you don't mind," Oshima says, "would you tell me the name of this organization?" The woman whips out a business card and passes it to him. His expression unchanged, Oshima reads it carefully, places it on the counter, then looks up with a blazing smile and gazes intently at the woman. A first-class smile guaranteed to make any red-blooded woman blush. This woman, strangely enough, doesn't react, not even a twitch of an eyebrow. What we've concluded is that, unfortunately, this library has several issues that need to be addressed. "From the viewpoint of women, is what you're saying?" Oshima commented. "Correct, from the viewpoint of women," the woman answers. She clears her throat. "And we'd like to bring this up with your administration and hear their response, so if you don't mind. We don't have something as fancy as an administration, but I would be happy to listen to you. Well, first of all, you have no restroom set aside for women. That's correct, isn't it? Yes, that's right. There's no women's restroom in this library. We have one restroom for both men and women. Even if you are a private facility, since you're open to the public, don't you think, in principle, that you should provide separate restrooms for men and women? In principle, Oshima says. Correct. Shared facilities give rise to all sorts of harassment. According to our survey, the majority of women are reluctant to use shared bathrooms. This is a clear case of neglect of your female patrons. Neglect, Oshima says, and makes a face like he's swallowed something bitter by mistake. He doesn't much like the sound of the word, it would seem. An intentional oversight. Intentional oversight, he repeats, and gives some thought to this clumsy phrase. So what is your reaction to all this? The woman asks, barely containing her. Irritation. As you can see, Oshima says, we're a very small library, and unfortunately, we don't have the space for separate restrooms. Naturally, it would be better to have separate facilities, but none of our patrons have ever complained. For better or for worse, our library doesn't get very crowded. If you'd like to pursue this issue of separate restrooms further, I suggest you go to the Boeing headquarters in Seattle and address the issue of restrooms on 747 seconds. A 747 feet's much bigger than our little library, and much more crowded. As far as I'm aware, all restrooms on passenger jets are shared by men and women. The tall woman frowns at him severely, her cheekbones jutting forward and her glasses riding up her nose. We are not investigating airplanes. 747 seconds are beside the point. Wouldn't restrooms in both jets and in our library in principle give rise to the same sorts of problems? We are investigating one by one public facilities. We're not here to argue over principles. Oshima's supple smile never fades during this exchange. Is that so? I could have sworn that principles were exactly what we were discussing. The woman realizes she's blown it. She blushes a bit, though not because of Oshima's sex appeal. She tries a different tack. At any rate, jumbo jets are irrelevant here. Don't try to confuse the issue. Earth. Understood. No more airplanes, Oshima promises. We'll bring things down to. The woman glares at him, and after taking a breath, forges on. One other issue I'd like to raise is how you have authors here separated by sex. Yes, that's right. The person who was in charge before us catalogued these and for whatever reason divided them into male and female. We were thinking of recataloguing all of them, but haven't been able to as of yet. We're not criticizing you for this, she says. Oshima tilts his head slightly. The problem, though, is that in all categories male authors are listed before female authors, she says. To our way of thinking, this violates the principle of sexual equality and is totally unfair. Oshima picks up her business card again, runs his eyes over it, then lays it back down on the counter. Miss Soga, he begins. When they called the roll in school, your name would have come before Miss Tanaka and after Miss Sikin. Did you file a complaint about that? Did you object, asking them to reverse the order? Does G get angry because it follows F in the alphabet? Does page 68 in a book start a revolution just because it follows 67? That's not the point, she says angrily. You're intentionally trying to confuse the issue. Hearing this, the shorter woman, who'd been standing in front of a stack taking notes, races over. Intentionally trying to confuse the issue, Oshima repeats, like he's underlining the woman's words. Are you denying it? That's a red herring, Oshima replies. The woman named Soga stands there, mouth slightly ajar, not saying a word. In English, there's this expression, red herring, something that's very interesting but leads you astray from the main topic. I'm afraid I haven't looked into why they use that kind of expression, though. Herrings or mackerel, or whatever. You're dodging the issue. Actually, what I'm doing is shifting the analogy, Oshima says, one of the most effective methods of argument, according to Aristotle. The citizens of ancient Athens enjoyed using this kind of intellectual trick very much. It's a shame, though, that at the time women weren't included in the definition of citizen. Are you making fun of us? Oshima shakes his head. Look, what I'm trying to get across is this. I'm sure there are many more effective ways of making sure that Japanese women's rights are guaranteed than sniffing around a small library in a little town and complaining about the restrooms and the card catalogue. We're doing our level best to see that this modest library of ours helps the community. We've assembled an outstanding collection for people who love books, and we do our utmost to put a human face on all our dealings with the public. You might not be aware of it, but this library's collection of poetry-related material from the 1910s to the mid-to-Showa period is nationally recognized. Of course there are things we could do better, and limits to what we can accomplish, but rest assured we're doing our very best. I think it'd be a whole lot better if you focus on what we do well than what we're unable to do. Isn't that what you call fair? Looks at the short one, who looks back up at her and opens her mouth for the first time. You've just been evading the point, mouthing empty arguments that avoid taking responsibility, she says in a really high-pitched voice. In reality, to use the term for the sake of convenience, what you're doing is an easygoing attempt at self-justification. You are a totally pathetic, historical example of the phallocentric, to put it mildly. A pathetic, historical example, Oshima repeats, obviously impressed. By his tone of voice, he seems to like the sound of that phrase. In other words, you're a typical sexist, patriarchic male, the tall one pipes in, unable to conceal her irritation. A patriarchic male, Oshima again repeats. The short one ignores this and goes on. You're employing the status quo and the cheap phallocentric logic that supports it to reduce the entire female gender to second-class citizens, to limit and deprive women of the rights they're due. You're doing this unconsciously rather than deliberately, but that makes you even guiltier. You protect vested male interests and become inured to the pain of others and don't even try to see what evil your blindness causes women and society. I realize that problems with restrooms and card catalogues are mere details, but if we don't begin with the small things, we'll never be able to throw off the cloak of blindness that covers our society. Those are the principles by which we act. That's the way every sensible woman feels, the tall one adds, her face expressionless. How could any woman of generous spirit behave otherwise, given the torments that I face? Oshima says. The two women stand there as silent as icebergs. Electra by Sophocles. A wonderful play. And by the way, the term gender was originally used to indicate grammatical gender. My feeling is the word sex is more accurate in terms of indicating physical sexual difference. Using gender here is incorrect, to put a linguistic fine point on it. A frozen silence follows. At any rate, what you've been saying is fundamentally wrong, Oshima says, calmly yet emphatically. I am most definitely not a pathetic historical example of a patriarchic male. Then explain simply, what's wrong with what we've said? The shorter woman says defiantly. Without sidestepping the issue or trying to show off how erudite you are, the tall one adds. All right, I'll do just that. Explain it simply and honestly, minus any sidestepping or displays of brilliance, Oshima says. We're waiting, the tall one says, and the short one gives a compact nod to show she agrees. First of all, I'm not a male, Oshima announces. A dumbfounded silence follows on the part of everybody. I gulp and shoot Oshima a glance. I'm a woman, he says. I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't joke around, the short woman says after a pause for breath. Not much confidence, though. It's more like she felt somebody had to say something. Oshima pulls his wallet out of his chinos, takes out the driver's license, and passes it to the woman. She reads what's written there, frowns, and hands it to her tall companion, who reads it and, after a moment's hesitation, gives it back to Oshima, a sour look on her face. Did you want to see it too? Oshima asks me. When I shake my head, he slips the license back in his wallet and puts the wallet in his pants pocket. He then places both hands on the counter and says, as you can see, biologically and legally, I am undeniably female. Which is why what you've been saying about me is fundamentally wrong. It's simply impossible for me to be, as you put it, a typical sexist, patriarchic male. Yes, but, the tall woman says, but then stops. The short one, lips tight, is playing with her collar. My body is physically female, but my mind's completely male, Oshima goes on. Emotionally, I live as a man, so I suppose your notion of being a historical example may be correct. And maybe I'm sexist, who knows? But I'm not a lesbian, even though I dress this way. My sexual preference is for men. In other words, I'm a female, but I'm gay. I do anal sex, and have never used my vagina for sex. My clitoris is sensitive, but my breasts aren't. I don't have a period. So what am I discriminating against? Could somebody tell me? The three of us listening are flabbergasted and don't say a word. One of the women clears her throat, and the jarring sound reverberates through the room. The clock on the wall loudly ticks away the seconds. I'm very sorry, Oshima says, but I'm in the middle of lunch. I'm having a tuna spinach wrap, and had eaten half of it when you asked me over. If one leave it much longer, the neighborhood cats will make a grab for it. People throw away kittens they don't want in the woods near the sea. So this neighborhood is full of cats. If you don't mind, I'd like to get back to my lunch. So excuse me, but please take your time and enjoy the library. Our library is open to everyone. As long as you follow the rules and don't bother the other patrons, feel free to do whatever you'd like. You can look at whatever you want. Go ahead and write whatever you like in your report. We won't mind. We don't receive any funding from anywhere, and pretty much do things our own way. And that's the way we like it. After Oshima leaves, the two women share a look. Then they both stare at me. Maybe they figure me for Oshima's lover or something. I don't say a word and start arranging catalog cards. The two of them whisper to each other in the stacks, and before long they gather their belongings and start to pull up stakes. Frozen looks on their faces, they don't say a word of thanks when I hand back their day packs. After a while, Oshima finishes his lunch and comes back inside. He hands me 2 spinach wraps made of tuna and vegetables wrapped in a kind of green tortilla with a white cream sauce on top. I have these for lunch. I boil up some water and have a cup of Earl Grey to wash it down. Lunch. Everything I said a while ago is true. Oshima tells me when I come back from. So that's what you meant when you told me you were a special person. I wasn't trying to brag or anything, he says. But you understand that I wasn't. Exaggerating, right? I nod silently. Oshima smiles. In terms of sex, I'm most definitely female, though my breasts haven't developed much, and I've never had a period. But I don't have a penis, or testicles, or facial hair. In short, I have nothing. A nice, no extra baggage kind of feeling, if you want to put a positive spin on it. Though I doubt you can understand how that feels. I guess not, I say. Sometimes I don't understand it myself. Like, what the heck am one, anyway? Really, what am I? I shake my head. Well, I don't know what I am either. A classic identity crisis? I nod. But at least you know where to begin, unlike me. I don't care what you are. Whatever you are, I like you, I tell him. I've never said this to anybody in my whole life, and the words make me blush. I appreciate it, Oshima says and lays a gentle hand on my shoulder. I know I'm a little different from everyone else, but I'm still a human being. That's what I'd like you to realize. I'm just a regular person, not some monster. I feel the same things everyone else does, act the same way. Sometimes, though, that small difference feels like an abyss, but I guess there's not much I can do about it. He picks up a long, sharpened pencil from the counter and gazes at it like it's an extension of himself. I wanted to tell you all this as soon as I could, directly, rather than have you hear it from someone else. So I guess today was a good opportunity. It wasn't such a pleasant experience, though, was it? I nod. I've experienced all kinds of discrimination, Oshima says. Only people who've been discriminated against can really know how much it hurts. Each person feels the pain in his own way, each has his own scars. So I think I'm as concerned about fairness and justice as anybody. But what disgusts me even more are people who have no imagination. The kind T.S. Eliot calls hollow men. People who fill up that lack of imagination with heartless bits of straw, not even aware of what they're doing. Callous people who throw a lot of empty words at you, trying to force you to do what you don't want to. Like that lovely pair we just met. He sighs and twirls the long, slender pencil in his hand. Gays, lesbians, straights, feminists, fascist pigs, communists, Hare Krishnas, none of them bother me. I don't care what banner they raise, but what I can't stand are hollow people. When I'm with them, I just can't bear it, and wind up saying things one shouldn't. With those women, I should have just let it slide, or else called Miss Seiki and let her handle it. She would have given them a smile and smoothed things over. But one just can't do that. I say things I shouldn't, do things I shouldn't do. I can't control myself. That's one of my weak points. Do you know why that's a weak point of mine? Because if you take every single person who lacks much imagination seriously, there's no end to it, I say. That's it, Oshima says. He taps his temple lightly with the eraser end of the pencil. But there's one thing I want you to remember, Kafka. Those are exactly the kind of people who murdered Miss Seiki's childhood sweetheart. Narrow minds devoid of imagination. Intolerance, theories cut off from reality. Empty terminology, usurped ideals, inflexible systems. Those are the things that really frighten me. What I absolutely fear and loathe. Of course, it's important to know what's right and what's wrong. Individual errors in judgment can usually be corrected. As long as you have the courage to admit mistakes, things can be turned around. But intolerant, narrow minds with no imagination are like parasites that transform the host, change form, and continue to thrive. They're a lost cause, and I don't want anyone like that coming in here. Oshima points at the stacks with the tip of his pencil. What he means, of course, is the entire library. I wish I could just laugh off people like that, but I can't. Chapter 20. It was already past 8 p.m. when the 18-wheeler refrigerated truck pulled off the Tomei Highway and let Nakata out in the parking lot of the Fujigawa rest area. Canvas bag and umbrella in hand, he clambered down from the passenger's seat to the asphalt. "Good luck in finding another ride," the driver said, his head sticking out the window. "If you ask around, I'm sure you'll find something. Much obliged. Nakata appreciates all your help." "Take it easy," the driver said, then waved and pulled back onto the highway. Fujigawa, the driver had said. Nakata had no idea where Fujigawa was, though he did understand he'd left Tokyo and was heading west. No need for a compass or a map to tell him that. He knew it instinctively. Now if only a truck going west would give him a ride. Nakata was hungry and decided to have a bowl of ramen in the rest area. Restaurant. The rice balls and chocolate in his bag he wanted to save for an emergency, not being able to read. It took him a while to figure out how to purchase a meal. Before going into the dining hall, you had to buy meal tickets from a vending machine, but he had to have somebody help him read the buttons. "My eyes are bad, so I can't see too well," he told a middle-aged woman, and she inserted the money for him, pushed the right button, and handed him his change. Experience had taught him it was better not to let on that he didn't know how to read, because when he did, people stared at him like he was some kind of monster. After his meal, Nakata, umbrella in hand, bag slung over his shoulder, made the rounds of the trucks in the parking lot, asking for a ride. "I'm heading west," he explained, "and I wonder if you'd be kind enough to give me a ride." But the drivers all took one look at him and shook their heads. An elderly hitchhiker was pretty unusual, and they were naturally wary of anything out of the ordinary. "Our company doesn't allow us to pick up hitchhikers," they all said. "Sorry." It had taken a long time to make it from Nakano Ward to the entrance to the Tomei Highway. He'd never been out of Nakano before, and had no idea where the highway was. He had a special pass for the city bus line he could use, but he'd never ridden by himself on the subway or train, where you needed to buy a ticket. It was just before 10 a.m. when he packed a change of clothes, a toilet kit, and some snacks in his bag, carefully put the cash he'd hidden under the tatami in a money belt for safekeeping, and then, the large umbrella in hand, left his apartment. When he asked the city bus driver how he could get to the highway, the man laughed. "This bus only goes to Shinjuku Station. City buses don't go on the highway. You'll have to take a highway bus." "Where can I get a highway bus that goes on the Tomei Highway?" "Tokyo Station," the driver replied. "Take this bus to Shinjuku Station, then take a train to Tokyo Station where you can buy a reserved seat ticket. The buses there will take you to the Tomei Highway." Nakata wasn't at all sure what he meant, but went ahead and took the bus as far as Shinjuku. But when he got there, he was overwhelmed. The massive station was jammed with people, and he had trouble moving through the crowds. There were so many train lines, too, that he couldn't figure out which one went to Tokyo Station. Since he couldn't read the signs, he asked a few passers-by, but their explanations were too fast, too complicated, and full of place names he didn't recognize. "I might as well be talking to Kawamura," Nakata thought to himself. There was always a police box to ask directions at, but he was afraid they'd mistake him for a senile old person and take him into custody, something he'd experienced once before. As he wandered around near the station, the exhaust and noise got to him, and he started to feel sick. Avoiding the crowded sidewalks, he found a small park set between two high-rise buildings and sat down on a bench. Nakata was at a complete loss. He sat there, muttering occasionally, rubbing the top of his close-cropped head. There wasn't a cat to be seen in the park. There were plenty of crows, though, squawking down and rummaging through the trash baskets. Nakata looked up at the sky a few times, and from the sun's position could guess the approximate time. Because of all the exhaust, perhaps, the sky was covered in a strange color. At noon, office workers from the nearby buildings flooded out to eat lunch in the park. Nakata ate the bean jam buns he'd brought with him, washing them down with hot tea from his thermos. Two young women sat down together on the bench besides his, and he decided to talk to them. "How can I get to the Tomei Highway?" he asked. They told him the same thing the city bus driver had said. "Take the Chuo line to Tokyo Station, then a Tomei Highway bus." Nakata tried that, but it didn't work, Nakata admitted. "I've never been out of Nakano Ward before, so I don't know how to take the train. I just know how to ride the city bus. I can't read, so I can't buy a ticket. I took the city bus here, but don't know how to go any farther." "You can't read?" they asked, astonished. He seemed like a harmless enough old man. A nice smile, dressed neatly. Carrying an umbrella on such a fine day like this was a bit odd, but he didn't appear to be homeless. A pleasant face, especially those bright-looking eyes. "You really mean to say you've never been outside Nakano Ward?" the girl with black hair asked. "Yes, I've tried not to ever go out of it. If Nakata got lost, there's nobody who'd come looking for me." "And you can't read," said the other girl, the one with dyed brownish hair. "That's right, I can't read at all. I can understand simple numbers, but can't add." I imagine it would be hard for you to take a train." "Yes, it's very hard. I can't buy a ticket." "If we had time, we could take you to the station and make sure you get on the right train. But we have to get back to work soon." "I'm really sorry." No need to apologize. I'll figure it out somehow. I've got it," the girl with black hair exclaimed. "Didn't Togaguchi over in sales say he had to go to Yokohama today?" "Yes, now that you mention it. He'd help out if we asked him. He's a little on the gloomy side, but not a bad guy, really," the brown-haired girl said. "Since you can't read, maybe it'd be better to hitchhike," the black-haired girl said. "Hitchhike? Ask for a ride from somebody. Mostly it ends up being rides with long-haul truckers. Regular cars don't pick up hitchhikers much." Nakata's not sure what long-haul truckers are. "As long as you go there, it'll work out. I hitchhiked once when I was in college. Truck drivers are all nice guys." "How far are you going on the Tomei Highway?" the brown-haired girl asked. "Nakata doesn't know," Nakata replied. "You don't know? I'll know when I get there. So I'll start out going west on the Tomei Highway. After that, I'll think about where I'll go. Anyhow, I have to go west." The two girls looked at each other, but Nakata's words were strangely persuasive, and they found themselves feeling kindly toward the old man. They finished their lunches, tossed their empty cans in the trash, and stood up. "Why don't you come with us?" the black-haired girl said. "We'll figure something out." Nakata followed them into a nearby building. He'd never been in such a large building before. The two girls had him sit at a bench next to the reception desk, then spoke with the receptionist, and told Nakata to wait there for a while. They disappeared into one of the elevator banks in the lobby. As Nakata sat there, umbrella and canvas bag in hand, office workers streamed back inside after their lunch hour. Another scene he'd never laid eyes on before in his life. As if by mutual consent, all the people were well dressed, ties, shiny briefcases, and high heels, everyone rushing off in the same direction. For the life of him, Nakata couldn't understand what so many people like this could possibly be up to. After a time, the two girls were back, accompanied by a gangly young man wearing a white shirt and striped tie. "This is Mr. Togaguchi," the brown-haired girl said. "He's about to drive to Yokohama, and he said he'll take you with him. He'll drop you at the Kohoku parking lot on the Tomei Highway, and hopefully you'll be able to find another ride there. Just go around telling people you want to go west, and when someone gives you a ride, be sure to buy them a meal when you stop somewhere. Do you follow?" "But do you have enough money for that?" the black-haired one asked. Yes, I have enough. Mr. Nakata's a friend of ours, so be nice to him, the brown-haired girl said to Taguchi. If you'll be nice to me, the young man replied timidly. One of these days, the black-haired one said. As they were saying goodbye, the girl said, Here's a little going-away present for when you get hungry. They handed him some rice balls and a bar of chocolate they'd bought at a convenience store. I don't know how to thank you enough for all you've done, Nakata said. I'll be praying that good things happen to you both. I hope your prayers come true, the brown-haired one said as her companion giggled. The young man, Togaguchi, had Nakata sit in the passenger seat of the high-ace van, then drove down the Metropolitan Highway and onto the Tome. The roads were backed up, so the two of them talked about all kinds of things as they inched along. Togaguchi was bashful and didn't say much at first, but after he got used to having Nakata with him, he started talking, to the point where it wound up less a conversation than a running monologue. There were a lot of things he wanted to talk about, and he found it easy to open up to a stranger like Nakata, whom he'd never see again. He explained that he'd broken up with his fiancée a few months ago. She'd had another boyfriend she'd been secretly seeing all the while. He said he didn't get along well with his bosses at work and was thinking of quitting. His parents had gotten divorced when he was in junior high, and his mother soon got remarried to some sleazeball. He'd lent money from his savings to a friend who didn't give any indication he'd be repaying him any time soon. And the college student who lived in the apartment next door blasted his music so loud he couldn't get much sleep. Nakata listened diligently, chiming in at appropriate points, tossing in an occasional opinion of his own. By the time their car pulled into the Kohoku parking area, Nakata knew just about everything there was to know about the young man. There was a lot he didn't understand, but he did see the big picture of Toguchi's life, namely that here was a poor young guy who, while trying to live an upright life, had his share of problems. Nakata's much obliged to you, he said. Thank you so very much for the ride. I enjoyed it. Thanks to you, Mr. Nakata, I feel completely relaxed now. I've never talked to anyone like this before, and I'm happy I could tell you everything. I hope I haven't bored you with all my problems. No, not at all. Nakata's very happy, too, to be able to talk with you. I'm sure good things are going to happen to you, Mr. Toguchi. The young man took a telephone card from his wallet and handed it to Nakata. Please take this card. My company makes them. Consider it a going-away present. One wish I could give you something better. Thank you very much, Nakata said, and carefully tucked it into his wallet. He had no one to phone, and didn't know how to use the card anyway, but he thought it was more polite to accept it. By now it was 3 p.m. It took another hour to find someone willing to take him as far as Fujigawa. The trucker was a beefy man in his mid-40s, with arms like logs and a jutting belly, who was hauling fresh fish in a refrigerated truck. I hope you don't mind the fish smell, the driver said. Fish are one of Nakata's favorites, Nakata replied. The driver laughed. You're a strange one, aren't you? People tell me that sometimes. I happen to like the strange ones, the driver said. People who look normal and live a normal life, they're the ones you have to watch out for. Is that so? Believe me, that's how it goes. In my opinion, anyway. Nakata doesn't have many opinions, though I do like eel. Well, that's an opinion. That you like eel. Eel is an opinion. Sure, saying you like eel's an opinion. Thus the two of them drove to Fujigawa. The driver said his name was Hagita. So, Mr. Nakata, what do you think about the way the world's going? He asked. I'm very sorry. I'm not bright, so I have no idea at all about that, Nakata said. Having your own opinion and not being very bright are two different things. But Mr. Hagita, not being very bright means you can't think about things. But you did say you like eel. Yes, eel is one of Nakata's favorites. That's a connection, see? Do you like chicken and egg over rice? Yes, that's one of Nakata's favorites too. Well, there's a connection there too, Hagita said. You build up relationships like that one after another, and before you know it, you have meaning. The more connections, the deeper the meaning. Doesn't matter if it's eel or rice bowls or grilled fish, whatever. Get it? No, I still don't understand. Does food make connections between things? Not just food, streetcars, the emperor, whatever, but I don't ride streetcars. That's fine. Look, what I'm getting at is no matter who or what you're dealing with, people build up meaning between themselves and the things around them. The important thing is whether this comes about naturally or not. Being bright has nothing to do with it. What matters is that you see things with your own eyes. You're very bright, Mr. Hagita. Hagita let out a loud laugh. It isn't a question of intelligence. I'm not all that bright, I just have my own way of thinking. That's why people get disgusted with me. They accuse me of always bringing up things that are better left alone. If you try to use your head to think about things, people don't want to have anything to do with you. Nakata still doesn't understand. But are you saying that there's a link between liking eel and liking chicken and egg over rice? You could put it that way, I suppose. There's always going to be a connection between you, Mr. Nakata, and the things you deal with, just like there's a connection between eel and rice bowls. And, as the web of these connections spreads out, a relationship between you, Mr. Nakata, and capitalists and the proletariat naturally develops. Pro what? The proletariat, Mr. Hagita said, taking his hands off the steering wheel and making a wide gesture. To Nakata, they looked as massive as baseball gloves. The people who work hard, who earn their bread through the sweat of their brow, those are the proletariat. On the other hand, you've got your guys who sit on their duffs, not lifting a finger, giving orders to other people and getting 100 times my salary. Those are your capitalists. I don't know about people who are capitalists. I'm poor, and I don't know anybody great like that. The greatest person I know is the governor of Tokyo. Is the governor a capitalist? Yeah, I suppose. Governors are more likely to be capitalist lapdogs, though. The governor is a dog. Nakata remembered the huge black dog who took him to Johnny Walker's house, and that ominous figure and the governor overlapped in his mind. The world's swarming with those kind of dogs. Pawns of the capitalists. Pawns? Like paws. Within another, any capitalist cats? Nakata asked. Hagita burst out laughing. Boy, you are different, Mr. Nakata, but I like your style. Capitalist cats. That's a good one. A very unique opinion you have there. Mr. Hagita? Yeah? I'm poor and received a sub-city every month from the governor. Was this the wrong thing to do? How much do you get every month? Nakata told him the amount. Hagita shook his head disgustedly. Pretty damn hard to get by on so little. That's not true because Nakata doesn't use much money. Besides the sub-city, one get money by helping people find their lost cats. No kidding? A professional cat finder, Hagita said, impressed. You're an amazing guy, I have to say. Actually, I'm able to talk with cats, Nakata said. I can understand what they say. That helps me locate the missing ones. Hagita nodded. I wouldn't put it past you. But not long ago, I found out I couldn't talk with cats anymore. I wonder why. Things change every day, Mr. Nakata. With each new dawn, it's not the same world as the day before, and you're not the same person you were either. You get what I'm saying? Yes. Connections change too. Who's the capitalist? Who's the proletarian? Who's on the right? Who's on the left? The information revolution, stock options, floating assets, occupational restructuring, multinational corporations, what's good, what's bad. Boundaries between things are disappearing all the time. Maybe that's why you can't speak to cats anymore. The difference between right and left Nakata understands. This is right and this is left. Correct? You got it, Hagita agreed. That's all you need to know. The last thing they did together was have a meal in a rest area restaurant. Hagita ordered 2 orders of eel, and when Nakata insisted on paying to thank him for the ride, the driver shook his head emphatically. No way, he said. I'd never let you use the pittance they give you for a subsidy to feed me. Much obliged, then. Thank you for such a treat, Nakata said, happy to accept his kindness. Nakata spent an hour at the Fujigawa rest area asking drivers for a ride, but couldn't find anyone willing to take him. He didn't start to panic, though, or get depressed. In his mind, time passed very slowly, or barely at all. He went outside for some air and wandered around. The sky was cloudless. the surface of the moon clearly visible. Nakata strolled around the parking lot, which was filled with countless huge trucks, like giant beasts lined up shoulder to shoulder, resting. Some of the trucks had at least 20 giant tires, each one as tall as a man. So many trucks, all racing down the highway so late at night. What could they possibly be carrying inside? Nakata couldn't imagine. If he could read the writing on the sides of the trucks, he wondered, would he be able to figure it out? After about an hour, he spotted 10 or so motorcycles parked in a corner of the lot, where there weren't many cars. A clump of young men stood nearby in a circle, looking at something and yelling. Intrigued, Nakata approached them. Maybe they'd discovered something unusual. When he got closer, he saw that they had surrounded someone lying on the ground and were punching, kicking, and generally trying their best to hurt him. Most of the men were unarmed, though one of them had a chain in his hand. Another held a black stick that looked like a policeman's baton. They wore unbuttoned short-sleeve shirts, some in T-shirts, others in running shirts, most of them with hair dyed blonde or brown, some with tattoos on their arms. The young man they were beating and kicking was dressed much the same. As Nakata approached, tapping the asphalt surface with the tip of his umbrella, a couple of the men turned around and glared at him. They relaxed when they saw it was just some harmless old man. "Why don't you beat it, Pops?" one of them growled, unperturbed. Nakata walked over even closer. The man on the ground seemed to be bleeding from his mouth. "Blood's coming out," Nakata said. "He might die." Caught off guard, the men didn't react right away. "Maybe we should kill you too while we're at it," the one with the chain said. "Killing one or two, no skin off my nose." "You can't kill someone for no reason," Nakata insisted. "You can't kill someone for no reason," one of them mimicked, and his friends laughed. "We got our reasons, pal," another man said, "and it ain't got nothing to do with you whether we kill him or not. So take your worthless umbrella and hit the road before it starts raining." The man on the ground started crawling forward, and a young man with a shaved head came over and kicked him hard in the ribs with his work boots. Nakata closed his eyes. He could feel something welling up inside him, beyond his control. He felt slightly nauseous. The memory of stabbing Johnny Walker suddenly came back to him. His hand still remembered what it felt like to plunge a knife into a man's chest. Connections. Could this be one of those connections that Mr. Hagita was talking about? Eel-knifed Johnny Walker? The men's voices sounded distorted, and he couldn't tell them apart anymore. Their voices blended together with the ceaseless drone of tires from the highway to make a strange tone. His heart surged blood to his extremities as night enveloped him. Nakata looked up at the sky, then slowly opened his umbrella and held it over him. Very carefully he took a few steps backward, opening a space between himself and the gang. He looked around, then took a few more steps back. The young men laughed when they saw this. "Hey, look at the cool old guy," one of them said. "He's actually using his umbrella." But they didn't laugh for long. Suddenly, unfamiliar greasy objects began to rain down from the sky, striking the ground at their feet with a weird slap. The young men stopped kicking their prey and looked up at the sky. There weren't any clouds, but things were definitely falling one after another from a spot in the sky. At first, in dribs and drabs, then gradually more and more fell, until before they knew it, they were caught in a downpour. The objects pelting down from the sky were little black lumps about 1.5 inches long. In the lights of the parking lot, it looked like slick black snow falling on the men's shoulders, arms and necks and sticking there. They desperately tried to yank the objects off, but couldn't. "Leeches!" someone yelled. As if given a signal, the men all shouted and raced across the parking lot to the restrooms. One of them, a young blond man, was knocked to the ground by a car he'd run in front of. He jumped up, slammed his fist on the hood of the car, and loudly cursed the driver. That was all, though, and he soon limped away toward the restrooms. The leeches rained down hard for a time, then tapered off and stopped. Nakata folded up his umbrella, brushed off the leeches, and went over to see how the injured man was doing. A mound of the slimy creatures squirmed all around, so he couldn't get very close, and the man on the ground was buried in them. Looking closely, Nakata could see that he was bleeding from cut eyelids, and some of his teeth looked broken. Nakata knew this was too much for him to handle by himself, so he hurried back to the restaurant and told one of the employees that a man was lying in the parking lot, hurt. "You'd better call the police or else he might die," he said. Not long after this, Nakata found a truck driver willing to give him a ride as far as Kobe. A sleepy-looking man in his mid-20s, not very tall, with a ponytail, a pierced ear, and a Chunichi Dragons baseball team cap. He sat there in the restaurant, smoking and flipping through a comic book. A gaudy Aloha shirt and oversized Nikes completed his wardrobe. He tapped his cigarette ashes into the leftover broth in his bowl of ramen, stared hard at Nakata, then gave a reluctant nod. "Yeah, okay. You can ride with me. You kind of remind me of my grandpa. The way you look, or maybe how you talk, kind of off the point. At the end, my grandpa got senile and died. A few years ago." He went on to explain that they should get to Kobe by morning. He was, delivering furniture to a department store warehouse there. As he pulled his truck out of the parking lot, they passed a car accident. A couple of patrol cars were already at the scene, red lights flashing, and a policeman with a signal light was directing traffic. It didn't appear to be much of an accident. A few cars had collided. The side of a minivan was dented, a car's taillight broken. The truck driver stuck his head out the window and exchanged a few words with the patrolman, then rolled up his window. "He said a pile of leeches fell from the sky," he said, unmoved. "They got crushed by cars, the road got all slippery, and some drivers lost control. So go slow and take it easy," he told me. On top of that, some local gang of bikers beat up somebody. Leeches and bikers. What a weird combination. Keeps the cops busy, at least. He drove carefully toward the exit. Even going slow, the truck slipped a couple of times, and the driver straightened it out with a subtle twist of the wheel. "Man, it really looks like a whole bunch fell down, and it's damn slippery. But boy, leeches, that's pretty gross. Ever had a leech stick to you?" "No. As far as Nakata can remember, I don't think so," Nakata responded. "I was brought up in the mountains of Gifu, and it happened to me lots of times. I'd be walking in the woods, and they'd fall down from the trees. Go wading in the streams, and they'd stick to your legs. I know a thing or two about leeches, believe me. Once they get stuck on you, they're hard to pull off. If you pull off a big sucker, your skin comes off, and you'll have a scar. So the best thing is to burn them off. Awful things, the way they suck your blood. And once they're filled up, they get all soft and mushy. Pretty gross, huh?" "Yes, it certainly is," Nakata agreed. "But leeches aren't supposed to fall down from the sky into some rest area parking lot. I never heard of anything so stupid. The guys around here don't know the first thing about leeches. Leeches don't fall from the sky, now do they?" Nakata was silent and didn't respond. A few years back, a huge number of millipedes appeared all at once in Yamanashi Prefecture, and cars were slipping everywhere. Just like this, the road got all slippery, and there were a lot of accidents. They got all over the tracks, and the trains couldn't run either. But even millipedes aren't going to rain down from the sky. They crawl out from somewhere. Anybody can see that. "A long time ago, I lived in Yamanashi during the war." "No kidding," the driver said. "Which war was that?"